Why, hello. Hello, everyone. How are you doing out there? Sorry for that little pause. I hope everyone is doing okay. Mary Cronert here from the LivingRoom Community Art Studio. Hello. Hi, folks. Welcome. We're having another live stream artist chat. Every Tuesday, we try to have one of these lovely little moments with another artist, creator, change maker, someone out there in the world doing lovely, extraordinary things, which is sometimes just doing the thing you really, really love. That's all it is sometimes. And today I am so thrilled to be joined by someone I haven't seen in a very long time, someone I'm lucky to have known for a little bit longer. And I'm excited to catch up with them, but also learn a little bit more about their craft, because the work they do is something that I find incredibly inspiring and moving and beautiful. And yeah, I just want to dig and learn more about where that comes from and why this person does what they do. So without further ado, let us invite Drew Lint onto the chat. Let's.
Hello.
Oh my goodness. My
How
heart.
are you doing, Mary?
How am I doing?
How are you doing? It's so nice to see you. What a pleasure.
It's so great to see you too. I'm okay. All is well. Enough. Busy, keeping busy, doing what you can, doing what anyone, like what we do what we can with what we have.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Yes.
Which today is this. Drew Lint, filmmaker, artist. I could describe you as an artist in so many ways. But for folks who are watching who may not be familiar with who you are, how would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as a filmmaker. I usually just say filmmaker. But I guess, of course, that already encompasses kind of, potentially wearing many hats. I have worked as a production designer, and, I mostly would consider myself to be a writer or director, working in a few different capacities, but that's by and large what I do. But, of course, as with most independent filmmakers, end up doing a little producing, a little of this, a little of that. I also love to collaborate with people who I, love and respect and just want to be a part of their work and what they're doing. I always love, just jumping into projects like that. So sometimes, I end up doing some kind of supportive role, just, to make something happen, and that can be really fun too. Does that I went on a bit of a tangent there. But yes, I'm a filmmaker. I'm Drew Lint and I'm a filmmaker. Thanks for having me. This is so nice.
Oh no, well, thank you for making time for us, because I know you're super busy right now. You got a couple of projects coming out. You're also back in school, yes?
Yes, I am.
Wow. Why?
Yeah.
Why now?
Yeah, right. Well, it seemed to make sense in a lot of ways. I think so. I had been living in Berlin for 7 years, and I moved back to Toronto almost exactly a year ago. I came back to Canada,
Yeah.
which was in a way something I had been thinking about for quite a while, but I ended up coming back to sort of like deal with some family stuff, and it was the pandemic, which was a really confusing time, for everyone in a number of ways. But I sort of thought, like, maybe this is the sign that I was waiting for to finally move back, because I knew that I wouldn't stay in Berlin forever, and I sort of was like waiting to be brought somewhere, to be like attracted to live somewhere different. Although I loved Berlin and still do, and miss it, of course. But I decided that Toronto made the most sense for me. Partially because it has such a vibrant independent film scene, and as a Canadian artist and filmmaker, ultimately, it makes sense to live in Canada. In a lot of ways, the way that like funding works, and that these kind of circles, make themselves, work as well.
Yeah.
So all that to say is I was considering applying to this program at York because friends of mine have done it and spoken very highly of it. It's the MFA program in film at York University that I'm doing now.
Nice.
But it seemed, once I had made the decision then to come back to Toronto and call this place home again, which I've, visited very frequently over the years and love and deeply, it sort of, I felt like it was a really nice way of re-entering, Canada, the Canadian film scene, and also, I think I wanted an environment that was like a safe kind of space to develop ideas, and also wanted to seek out mentorship. And I think that's something that I really went into the program looking for those things, and so far, I feel good about where that's going. So that's great. And I mean, one of the beautiful things that I didn't really go into it thinking I want to meet, new friends and new collaborators. That was sort of just not on my radar, but it's been a great experience to get to know so many other filmmakers too, who are working in sometimes very different capacities. I mean, it's been a treat to sort of see so many talented people who have really interesting projects that are projects I would never otherwise, get to be involved with at this stage of development. And it's great to hear people sort of talk about their work, and it's been really helpful for me also. It's a very, like warm environment that's conducive to development and creativity. So
That's
it's been great. Yeah.
that's amazing. One of the things I think about often as a Canadian actor, which I think can cross over, that sometimes it does feel so the industry is one thing and the art of what we love to do in storytelling is another. And I think that having that support system is so important.
Yes, totally.
If you had to describe, like, of course, you loved working in Berlin as well. What is the difference between those two, like these two worlds in your mind?
I mean, Berlin also, like, there's something really special about the city, and
Yeah.
at least like I wrote and then shot my first feature there as a director,
Yeah.
which was a wonderful experience. And of course, it was like absolute mayhem because that is just independent film in general, but also first features, and also low budget features and low budget anything for that matter. But I think in Berlin, a lot of people are willing to work on something if they just think it's an interesting project,
Hmm.
and like kind of put everything into it. A lot of people just like had faith in the project and were excited about it and wanted to do something cool. And so, I think that you find that in Toronto too. So I'm not saying that that's not present here, but I don't know. I mean, also, this was like however many years ago, 5 years ago or something. I don't even want to do the math because it scares me. But it was long enough ago too that it was like everyone was sort of like, we were all like in our 20s and just like, let's do this thing. And it felt very not spontaneous, but really kind of like everyone just like went for it and we just committed to it.
Yeah.
And it was, which was a great experience for me, and I was touched that so many people were willing to do that. But then, ultimately, because of the way the funding works with all of these projects, like it ends up being very national. I mean, that project wasn't funded,
Yeah.
by Canada. We did a crowdfunding campaign, and then, we had an investor and just scrounged. But then for like making another feature, it's sort of the thing you can never do again. Like I would never have it in me to do quite that guerrilla of a film again.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it's like I wouldn't qualify for German funding, from like an artist standpoint. I mean, if we worked with a German production company, then could theoretically access funds that way. But my producer Karen, who I worked with on MM and have worked with on lots of stuff over the years, is here in Canada, And so, making something an international co-production also becomes like exponentially more uh, expensive and complicated.
Yeah.
So there, it seemed to me at a certain point that like it was more of a commitment thing. Like if I wanted to stay in Berlin and work in the narrative feature world, it was kind of like committing to a long-term it was a long-term commitment, and also probably it would involve working more in the German language, which could be interesting, but ultimately I was sort of like, if I want to make English language films, it just made a lot of sense to be to come to Canada again and sort of like pursue projects here.
Well, a lot of hearts coming up there for you. I think a lot of folks glad to have you back.
That's nice. I mean, I'm glad to be back too. Of course, like it's a position that I put myself in where I miss this place that I put roots down in over the years, but then also am like so thrilled to be back and reconnecting with old friends. And I mean, there are also lots of people who I've stayed close to, so it's great to just be close to those people now. But yeah, such is the life of straddling continents. But now it's nice to have friends that live in other cities that you can visit.
And to be able to put yourself, I think there's something really important, for if that you have enough privilege to be able to move or to relocate, just to put yourself in a very strange, like the strangeness of other environments can I think can be really it can help you recognize what you miss and what you want that you had once. But I think it really does something interesting to your creative brain as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even like being in this totally different environment, I think definitely does that. I mean, because then you're also working to understand like what is going on day to day. Even like what is this new culture? And I mean, like the difference between Germany and Canada is like not as pronounced maybe as some other cultural comparisons, but there are still significant differences, and like the subtle differences are sometimes surprising. Not to go into too much on that, but yeah, and the language too. It's so like culture is so connected to language that until you have some kind of working understanding of it, you do miss major nuance, in the way that people behave. And we probably take that for granted also as like native English speakers because, we understand so much of media because so much of it, like, I mean, obviously there's lots of non-English media, but American media and British media are so dominant, even in Canada, probably they're the more dominant media sources we're getting. So, but yeah, it's really like it's a special thing to try to like understand from that perspective, and then also just to be in a different place that looks different and feels different. And I found it very inspiring, and I do think that it had a huge impact on the way that I think and on my work. And it's been, to further your point, like I think now coming back to Canada, I also see it gives me another context, like it puts it into a different perspective, like having then now also returned to Canada, like looking at I think I learned lessons I didn't even realize that I was learning, or was exposed to things I didn't really even understand until later. I know that's really vague, but I think it's I don't know. And also like during this, I mean, I was gone for 7 years, so I think like I grew a lot, which makes sense. That what is it? I think it's 7 years. It's 7 years or 8 years where like every cell in your body is supposed to have been replaced, so you're like technically a totally new entity.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really scientifically sound, but I've heard about it.
That sounds like the premise of another film. It sounds
actually.
And that film was beautiful for folks who haven't seen it. M was just extraordinary, epic storytelling for a first film, and award winning, if I might throw that in as well.
That is true. Thank you, Marianne. That's very kind of you. But it's yeah, and I think. Well, no, go on.
If people want to see it, and we'll come to this at the end, we'll revisit it as well. But and then we will come to again, like to your future project as well. But if people want to revisit that film, is there somewhere they can watch it?
That's a little complicated for Canadians, unfortunately, because it actually wasn't distributed in Canada. I don't know if we want to go like full, what's the tea on that? I don't know how but that like basically no, I mean maybe, I won't say too much, but it didn't qualify as Canadian content because we spent so much money in Europe.
Hmm.
So it was a lot harder to get it distributed in Canada because it's incentivized for distributors to, you know, to put Canadian content on because it satisfies laws and things. So anyway, we haven't actually had it just distributed in Canada, but I hope maybe sometime it will actually be able to come out. But you can watch it on Amazon Prime in the US, the UK, France, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, I think. So I'm not saying you should get a VPN and watch it that way through your signals in another country, but like that's one way that you could do it.
If you wanted to.
If you wanted to. Yeah, just something to consider.
But again, these really interesting challenges that I think Canadian filmmakers face day to day. It's such a hustle in any of the arts in where we live because of that one point about the cultural overload we receive from the United States and overseas from the UK. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it does pose unique challenges for a smaller country like ours, vast in territory but small in number. Okay, yes, okay, but I want to rewind a little bit before I get caught up in future stuff and talk a little bit about your artist journey, because that's one of the things I realized I don't quite know about you. I've never talked to you before about when you first knew or realized you were an artist, when you first realized that film was something you were drawn to. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, Drew Lint?
Yes, I can. Um, I mean, I was always really into movies, rather than films, but movies as a kid, if you know what I mean. But and I think actually like my dad was as well, like super into the classics, and like I think I gained an appreciation for film from watching movies with my parents, and I mean like my dad specifically having such a keen interest in it. And I I mean when I was I was in the drama club in high school, and also it took media arts, and we made videos and stuff. I mean like there are hilarious videos that I don't know have survived, but like funny things we made at that like adolescent stage, some of which, well, I mean it was just like I just had so much fun with it. And I think before that I had wanted to be an actor when I was super young, and did like a little bit of, I don't know, acting lessons, kind of, not super serious, but I was into it and did a bunch of drama in high school. But I think once I got into photography in high school as well, and I mean I had a bunch of teachers that were really important for my development. Shout out to Mr. Mann, Mrs. Hickman, Miss McEachran, among others. But being exposed to those things and being able to actually like make photos, which we developed in a dark room, and then also like making videos which we were cutting, like using, we had Max. I mean that's because of Zach Melnick that we had all these like amazing facilities at my high school. But so also shout out there. But so because I had access to it as a teenager, then I was like, I realized kind of that really was something I could do. I think it felt a lot more real. I was like, I want to be a director when I was 14 or something. But then it felt like actually I could work as a filmmaker, photographer, something in the media field. And so basically I applied to photography and film programs straight out of high school, and then went to the university formerly known as Ryerson, when I was like 18. So that was that journey, and of course it's been like a roller coaster ride ever since. But And yeah, like I said too, I mean, we were encouraged to learn skills aside from just making our own movies. And so I trained as a production designer and did do work, as a designer, and then also like in lots of different capacities in the art department, which I still moonlight in, to pay that rent. So
Eats. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, all that to say that I guess that comes back to what we talked about in the very beginning. How do I define myself? Filmmaker is a general term, but also it encompasses a lot, and I think it has to encompass a lot.
Yeah.
And probably, like, I don't know, I was going to say, do you consider yourself to be a filmmaker? Obviously, you're an actor, but like, I don't know.
That's a really interesting question. I think actors, I've written films. I've helped people write films. I have no problem giving feedback because I'm that kind of annoying person if someone wants. I think as an actor, that's one part of the industry though where it's a very weird one. It's one of the things I kind of resent about that field specifically, that industry, because I feel like so much of the time we, like as actors, are siloed. You are an actor, you show up, you do your part, you're like a piece of furniture,
Mm,
dress up, say your lines, move there, now go away. And you don't have any piece of, like, you're not really playing any other roles. That's one of the reasons why I love, independent films so much, because there are opportunities to, I mean, I hope no one from acting, but I do love those moments where you can throw in. And when I was watching your reel, I was reminded of something with Zach and Yvonne actually, where uh, it was a perfect example of capturing moments because they're available, and artists and filmmakers find out, okay, this is happening this day. We're going to help one another shoot this and run and do what we can to grab, a once in a lifetime potential experience. Like that was the fire day, which is, I was going to be burned into my memory. I wasn't trying to be clever because I'm not. But moments like that, where that is so, it's about the work, it's about the art, it's also just about collaboration on small scale. That was a really joyous and exhausting day in a lot of ways, but a perfect example. Like actors, we don't really have a lot of agency unless we create our own projects, write our own projects, produce our own projects. That's why I tend to call myself an artist more often than not, because I want to widen that, open that door a little more for myself. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think of actor? What do you think? Oh, I on. Let's get together and burn more things down.
yeah,
Safety, everyone. Safety.
safety first. That was also like, wow, how much fun. Um,
It's all,
yeah.
watch Drew's reel. Watch Drew's reel, and you will see some fire.
Yeah, you can also, that video is also somewhere. It's on my Vimeo too, actually. You can watch Rough Trade, and there's all kinds of fire. But it's, no, I get distracted by the fire. Oh yeah, actors. I've never worked as an actor professionally. Like so it's, I'm totally coming up from the other side of things, but I feel like in my experience, some of the best things that I've ever made or worked on have been because of collaborations with
Hmm.
actors and performers that allows them to actually have some kind of agency, like you were saying,
Yeah.
to borrow a word. But yeah, it's
Well,
I
you
guess
work.
that's how you work too, like because sometimes, but you would think that people also would want to actually, engage with actors and have them be involved in decisions. I guess, of course, like at a certain point of a film set, it's like if it's run from the top down, then like that person is in charge, and it's sort of like a balancing act with that maybe. But I mean, I don't know.
I think perhaps I've been a little too cruel. I think no one in the projects wants it to be that way. It's not like people, oh, hi, actor, shut up and sit over there. Uh,
No, no, of course.
I just think the way when it comes to filmmaking, because it can be so expensive, there's so many people involved in the process. Oftentimes, uh, the people who are in the movie get a lot of attention because they're what the audience sees at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it plays such a small part in that process when it comes down to it, really. And if you're lucky, you're working with people who are interested in knowing what you think and wanting to collaborate and shift things. And the best, cinematographers that I've worked with and directors will follow your lead. If they see something exciting there, they won't shut it down. They'll open it up. But oftentimes there's just not a lot of time for that for the actor, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point too, is that, yeah, sometimes it's just like,
Say your line.
to finish, yeah, please say your line, we have to move on. But I mean, I think when you do have the time, when it is possible, and of course that's like the more independent kind of projects, where maybe like time is looser. I don't know. Also, like sometimes schedules can be so rigid that it just actually is counterproductive. But then also like you do have to finish. It's such a balancing act, and like that, I guess that basically is filmmaking. I mean, there's so much being managed at the same time, where you're weighing. I feel like the more that I do it, the more that I feel like I'm just doing math all the time in my head. Like I'm weighing, I mean, not literally math, but like I'm weighing kind of how much time do we have for that? If we want to have this, then for this, like we have to eat at such and such time, then like, but we really want to have this, particular shot. Whereas, this one maybe we can lose, but like this really, important one, whatever. We need to have enough time for like, yeah, to get the performances down. I don't know. Usually, if you can plan a lot in advance and give yourself room, then you actually can have these beautiful moments where, actors or performers or whoever can or you can just find something that's amazing and it's like, oh, actually, this shot was way better than we didn't expect. Like looking around and finding things and just thinking like, actually, the way that we conceptualized this was overly complicated. If we simplify it, we can actually get more bang for our buck, and it means that we have more time to work with actors and also make it look good. So I don't know. It's all like it's all negotiation.
That's it. It's dynamic, ever evolving, ever growing, but within a structure. I think there's yeah. You also like one of the things I love about your work, and I'm also very jealous of, is you work with dancers so frequently. I notice you make a difference. You say performers, actors. I feel like there are some you might see different performers in certain, and you love working with dancers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Which is also like, I mean, interesting that we got on this track of talking about the collaboration with actors, with performers. I did carefully use the word performer. I mean, partially because I've done a lot of work with dancers, and I mean, often that work, because I'm not a dancer, although I have like an immense appreciation for dancers. I mean, trained or not, but there's at a certain point, there's a lot of trust being put in, or that I'm putting in a dancer who I just know will do a beautiful job of communicating what should be communicated.
Yeah.
But I find that really exciting. I mean, it's always, again, it's sort of like a balance between making sure that it's doing the job that we want, but then also giving them the freedom to kind of like go there. Because I mean, in the same way that an actor can bring something really like unique and special, and improvise something or find a look or find the way of saying a line, a dancer does that too. It's just, it's not by speaking, it's moving. And movement can be so powerful. We can talk about this project that I worked on.
I would love to.
Yeah. This music video that it will come out soon.
Yeah.
It's for the song Time by Makeup and Vanity Set. So, spoiler, it's coming soon. And we made a dance film essentially for this music video with these two dancers, both of whom are like immensely talented, and of course, like, intentionally cast for being so different from each other. And they both just you know, they really brought it, and it was amazing to work with them and let them go and do their thing, and to have them interpret, you know, to discuss with them, you know, this is what it should feel like, this is, you know, generally what it should look like, and like how we're going to shoot it, and then have them kind of take that and run with it. It was just like such a beautiful experience.
It was, I mean, I was privileged enough to have a little sneak peek in my, yeah. And oh, you're getting some love from Brazil. Oh yeah, send the love, folks. If you want to send more love to Drew, please do.
That's nice. Thank you for the love. Sorry, I'm not being very I keep not looking at the comments. Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
I agree as well. I love your work as well. I think a lot of folks on here. And you say the perfect director. Oh, interesting.
That's very
Our
nice.
director. Maybe. Are you the perfect director?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. Well, I mean that I don't know. Perfection is a lot to live up to.
Fair enough, fair enough.
I appreciate it.
So in this latest piece that I can't wait for folks to see, it's really beautiful. It encapsulates a lot. The music is extraordinary as well. So you bring two dancers together. How much of that is helping just provide the environment in which they feel comfortable and safe, and how much, and letting them do what they do, and how much are you involved in things like choreography and like how do you, I mean, it's a whole other language in ways.
Yeah, it is, and it's also like I would say it's a language that I don't speak fluently. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Comparing it to how well I speak German, let's see, maybe somewhere in the middle. But I think it's about the way that I have tended to work with dancers, and especially on that one where there was a pretty specifically written script for that video.
Mm-hmm.
I had a pretty clear idea of many parts of it, but wanted to leave. You know, there was a certain. I asked them both to interpret a particular type of movement that also evoked a particular emotion. You know, it was all about this feeling of elation, feeling of like freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and there were certain types of movements that I knew that I really wanted to see, as sort of like throwing the body backwards and arching the back, and also like things that were moving, you know, in a circular way. But because we had cast, the two dancers are Alvin Colantes and Claudia Moore, who, you know, are like polar opposites, but also it's great to see them in this video because they hang together so well.
Yeah.
I mean, partially because of their differences, but it was really interesting also in the editing to find these moments where they both, you know, had taken, based on those conversations we had, you know, they interpreted, you know, my direction in similar but different ways. So it was just really beautiful to see that, and then to have their own kind of, yeah, I mean, their own like authorial touch, like being involved in it because you know, they were the ones doing the choreography. It was improvised, although we had conversations in advance. Of course, I'm sure they had like planned things, but yeah, it was a great experience, and yeah, I'm happy. I'm excited for it to come out. I mean, hopefully, we don't have to wait too much longer.
I hope so too. It's extraordinary. I can't wait to see how people respond to it. And it's interesting to hear you talking about opposites, because when I watch work, there seems to be, I think I've talked to you about this before. I think I've commented at you before. One of the things I love about your work is how you play with opposites. You play with, you know, hard and soft and motion and stillness and light and dark, all that, right? But it's just so, it's like knowing that you could watch M and you don't need to know German to watch this movie. Language is not a barrier. The film tells a story that anyone can follow if they, you know, let themselves in. But I find all your films do that. Your films tell stories without having to rely on language, whether you're working with dancers or not. Is that something that's intentional?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. That's something that, I mean, I've always been really, I guess all of my films have been pretty visually focused, but I mean also like between, you know, like a sort of audio visual based language. And I'd like to think that I'm interested in getting more, like pushing a little more into whatever you want to call it, traditional narrative
Oh,
cinema in some ways. I mean, I'm writing things with a lot more dialogue these days, which is sort of like fun new territory for me. But I really want to retain
yeah.
um, that, that part of, I think, my films that is strong is the storytelling, which comes from the combination of visuals and sound. Um, so I hope that people can continue to understand the films easily without being able to hear the words at all. But yeah, I think moving forward, I'm interested in kind of combining those things, and I think that's a really fun challenge too. To retain. I wouldn't exactly call them experimental, but to take this sort of more visual approach, or more like it's not also, I think it's narrative too. It's not that it's non-narrative, but to take
Mhm.
slightly less traditional approach and apply it to um, slightly more traditional types of film.
Mm. Oh, and yes. So even though it hasn't a lot of dialogue, this is Caro Crespo. Even though it hasn't a lot of dialogue, talked a lot of the public by the body language. I think it's communicating through the body language and amazing. Yeah, it is an amazing film, and
Very sweet, thank you. But
people,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And it's amazing. I think it's so telling what's communicated when people don't speak. You know, and how they don't speak, like the lack of dialogue sometimes says a lot. And so that's something that I do want to continue to explore that. But trying to balance it, like, again, it's all a balancing act. That feels like feels like life and filmmaking. Everything is about balance.
so balance, the magic balance. When you figure that out, let me know because I'd like to
Exactly.
more of that in my life. So moving forward, then, what kind of stories are you interested in telling? If you're moving in a direction where things might get more explicitly narrative in a traditional kind of, I imagine one of the things you mean is sort of like more finding a balance between movie and film, perhaps?
Yeah, that's also a good way of putting it. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm I continue to be interested in sort of like character based projects, and still want to have that like strong visual component. But yeah, I guess I want to. I think there are things that you have access to as a filmmaker when you're working with dialogue, in that you just can say more. You know.
Yeah.
Like even in the most literal sense. And I'm just interested in exploring that, and also like making, yeah, I think also making films that are, accessible enough that like a wider audience maybe also is willing to check them out. But we still have to make it interesting for them. We still have to have fun with it.
Yeah. Push those boundaries and poke at the audience a little bit.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so. Is there anything that you're working on right now that you can talk about? And it's okay if you can't.
um what could I talk about? I mean, I have stuff that's in development at school, which is all kind of like too early along to really say too much about. I There is a film that I have been working on that's set where I'm from, like in the countryside, out in the southern Ontario by Lake Erie.
What?
Yeah, which I don't know. Again, it's like maybe very far down the road that will actually get made, but it feels like something I want to do eventually, and so I'm sort of working toward that slowly. We'll see. Yeah,
That,
yeah.
wow.
I'm also interested. I love. It's been fun. Like moving back to Toronto, it's been fun to kind of find. I had this conversation with a friend very recently about old Toronto, because like so much of the city is now glass
Okay.
and like towering. Um,
Yeah. The city
yeah,
is becoming a condo when.
Yeah,
one giant.
yeah, exactly. One sort of like conjoined condo. Um, so I'm interested in seeking out the pre-condo Toronto and representing that. So that's something else that I'm really interested in making film. Not necessarily films about that, but the setting is so important, at least for me in films. And maybe that's also partly my production design background, but it's,
Mm,
I mean, I love, I think the setting just informs the mood and the atmosphere and then also the content of the film so much.
yeah.
So that's one thing that I can talk about. That's a little bit vague, but
Oh, good. You keep us on the edge of our seat. You keep us. We'll tune in, watch this space, etc., etc. It's. Um, I'm. I love chatting with you so much. Okay. Uh, you described yourself when we were chatting the other day as a serial capturist. Is that how you described yourself?
I think that is what I say.
Yeah. So is that to do with like how much is that part of the storytelling you do as a movie slash filmmaker?
Well, that's a great question because I think, and probably many people can relate to this too. Like, I mean, now having a phone, which also like shoots 4K, by the way, like wow, that's just like in our pockets. Um, having that on the ready all the time, you can actually just like spring into action and shoot, photos and video of things and capture moments, which is like basically the antithesis of what it is like to shoot a narrative film, mostly. In that, well, not for everyone, I guess, but it's a totally different way of working than when you set out to like write a script and then sit down and like shoot like shot list something. It's
Mm-hmm.
the spontaneity of capturing things, in your day to day life. I mean, I find that so personally valuable. And that, I mean, I think I was joking that there's just, once I started paying for iCloud storage, it's like there's like millions of videos that will just be sitting on a server in Texas somewhere forever and probably never be looked at again. But it's great to have them just in case you need them. But even if it's just references, like that's the other thing, I find if I capture something out in the street that like is a really powerful moment, then maybe that ends up working its way into some other project. Whether it's written in and then like recreated, or maybe there's some found. Well, it's not found footage if it's my own, I guess, but maybe there's some other project lurking on the horizon, which will be comprised of these kind of collected moments. I mean, actually, that's how NM started. When I was first writing it, was like I was just taking notes, and
What do you
taking
mean?
like I just was like literally making notes in the notes application in my computer and like taking photos of things. This was probably before, definitely my phone didn't shoot 4K then. But just sort of compiling moments together, which ended up fleshing out that script from being, originally just this like sort of rough concept to then feeling more fully fleshed out. So I suppose that's also something that's just a part of my working process in general. And I could imagine a lot of people do the same, just by capturing these visuals as a serial capturist, capturing these visuals and little moments and then, squirreling them away, even if it's just to take the photo and then remember it, to have it, for yourself. I don't even necessarily look at the images again, but I think once you take the photo and see it composed like that, then somehow it like lodges in the brain and you can access it later.
Well, because that's one of the things I think about is just as humans and how we move through our days and the kind of stories we tell ourselves. Like it feels like when we're using Instagram or capturing events like yourself, that what we are doing is making movies. We're making films for ourselves, taking that moment, concretizing it somehow, so it doesn't just even if it does go into the cloud and we don't again. I There's some kind of ritual that's going that I find really, I don't know, very, very interesting. I don't know where that's going.
Yeah, no, I can totally, I know what you mean. There's something, about the idea, the act of actually capturing it that I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, it saves it for later somehow. It's, I find now that I'm in school, I'm finding like making notes about something helps me to remember it and kind of like fully wrap my head around it. And maybe it's the same thing, the act of actually capturing something, the act of recording it.
And then it becomes different as well. It's not the original thing. We've already changed it. We've already put our stamp on it somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yes. One day I imagine you one day scrolling through your cloud. Is that what people do with clouds? I don't know. You'll be going through your cloud and you'll find some sort of image that will be the exact, as like, it'll be like a idea explosion. Some story will emerge and unfold from that one image that you've forgotten about forever. And
Oh yeah, it's gonna be like, oh my god, that image that I've forgotten about, now that's an interesting idea. That can be the movie that Mary and I make.
don't you tease me, Drew Lint.
That would be great.
Do not tease me. For years and years I've been waiting, and you keep going to these gorgeous dancers. Oh, don't you dare tease me. Don't you dare.
No teasing, no teasing.
All right. Oh, you give me hope. You dangle it. Okay. So, you know what? You've been so lovely. I've had you on the line, so to speak, for a while. We always like to ask everyone we chat with if you, it's not exactly advice. We're not looking for advice, but kind of like looking back over things and knowing where you are right now. For people who might be, or maybe they're thinking about becoming movie makers, filmmakers, maybe they're thinking about becoming dancers. I don't know what it might be. People who are pursuing their art, what advice would you have given your younger self now? Things, maybe something you know now that you wish you'd known then.
That's a great question. What would I tell past Drew? I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind that it might not be the easy path to take on the path that is like the interesting path, which is making what you want to make and doing what you want to do. But if that's really what you want to do, then you just have to take the difficult path. I mean, I definitely, looking back, would I do this all again? Yeah, definitely. But I think it's a long and arduous path, is what it is. And of course, you end up feeling you reap what you sow, I guess. You end up like with the rewards if you put that work in. But it is like, it's not easy, and of course, a lot of luck comes into it too. But I think optimism goes a long way, and hard work goes a long way, and I don't know. These things, I remember talking about making features with somebody, and I mean, not just features, but also, films in general, like art in general. It's not that it like wants to be made. It doesn't just want to exist. You just need to do it, because if you don't do it, it's not going to exist. So, so it shouldn't be an easy birth. It just takes like rolling that boulder up the hill, and hopefully it's not Sisyphean and it continues to roll down and have to be rolled up again. But maybe that's also kind of what the life is, and maybe knowing that is part of the joy.
Yeah, that's pretty beautiful.
Oh, good. Good.
That's so much of it, isn't it? It's not giving up. Taking care of yourself. What do you do to take care of yourself then on that journey? Because it's not like a game where suddenly there's momentum and everything arrives all at once. It is, the ups and downs, and finding your voice and holding on to your voice, and during those difficult times. What makes that easier for you?
Yeah, I mean, that can be hard. Obviously, I, like everyone else, have plenty of moments of not feeling, like I feeling like, what am I doing? Actually, this is like, how did I possibly think that this was a good idea? But I mean, I have found that there's no, who was that? I read a book by, I'm blanking on her name, which is such a shame. Wait,
Oh, Google time.
Yeah, exactly.
We're watching Drew Lint
You're
Googling.
watching me Googling. Patricia Highsmith. Okay, I'm glad that I looked it up because I wouldn't have remembered. I was thinking Joan. So Patricia Highsmith wrote this book about writing suspense fiction,
Hmm?
which is really fun. Actually, it's called like How to Write Suspense Fiction or something. It's a fun read. You can fly through it if it appeals to you. I mean, I think there's a lot of lessons that can also be, extend not just to suspense. Um,
Yeah.
but she's just like, her writing style is fun also. Um, but she had advice for when you're writing specifically and you hit a roadblock and you can't get by it, which
Mhm.
for her was to take a nap, and then come back to it. And I'm not much of a napper myself, but I do think that there's something to be learned there. And I had to think like, actually, this is something that I've naturally come to understand as well, that just taking time and space and getting perspective can sometimes be just so useful. I mean, I know it's like so hard to actually get distance from your phone these days. The magical thing we were just talking about, which can capture anything,
Yeah.
also is like, of course, a magnet for our attention. And
Yeah.
um, I know that's really hard to wrench it out of your grasp sometimes, but I think if you can manage to, I mean, going for a bike ride, that really saved me during the pandemic. Was just like going for bike rides.
Yeah.
It was just like to get a little time outside and just to clear my head. That always cleared my head. Um, so I think any strategies that help with that, I think that's like super useful. But yeah, sometimes just sleeping on something. I mean, like I have a script due for school today,
Oh, what are
um,
you doing
which
here?
yeah, which I was working on yesterday, and was sort of like, I can't keep working in the evening now. It's like I need to just actually take a break and come back to sleep on it and come back to it tomorrow. And I got right to working this morning, which was great. So let's see. I have the rest of the afternoon.
And I shall let you go then. That's a good cue
Yeah.
thing. Oh, it's been just always a joy. Always lovely talking to you.
Likewise. I mean, it's so nice to see your face and chat with you. It's been way too long. So thank you for having me. What a delight.
Well, thank you for being out there and doing what you do. I'm looking forward to the next projects. If folks want to follow you or find your work, support you, how do they do that?
I mean, I'm here on Instagram at Drew Lint, DREWLINT. And my website is also like drewlint.com. Pretty easy. My Vimeo is attached. So I think you can pretty much link between them that way. So, keep an eye out, and it's more to come, basically.
Fantastic. Oh, Drew, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mary. What a delight.
We'll see you again soon.
Yes, I hope
Oh,
so.
mwah. Take care. Bye, Drew. Well, I don't know about you, but that was lovely for me. I needed that. Thank you so much to Drew Lint for joining us today and taking time away from school and all the work that entails. But what a lovely thing to be reminded of, just taking that break, stepping away, and doing what you love is important, even if it's not always easy, and it won't always be easy. I think that message can be, yeah, that's a message across the board for anyone who's involved in any of the arts. That piece about loving it and wanting to help the art happen, because it won't happen on its own. It won't happen without you, your voice. That's something really important to remember. So thank you, Drew, for reminding me of that. And folks, you're awesome. Thank you so much for watching. We're here at Living Room Art Studio, and we'll be back again with lots more online programming on our Facebook page, on the Instagram account. And we do lots of Zoom stuff too. So if you're interested in workshops, especially things like creative growth or creative writing, anything like that, check out our Facebook page to look at our events and see what we have coming up next. Okay. In the meantime, thank you again for being here. Thank you to Drew Lint for being our beautiful guest today. And until we can connect and create with one another in person, I look forward to connecting and creating with you right here online. Thanks so much, folks. Bye.